Alright, let's move on to the next question. Question number 34. Now, one look at this, in fact, even without reading the question, you would probably understand that this is a question of photosynthesis. So like I say, this is a very common example because they like to use this plant known as a hydrilla. Now the hydrilla plant, because it's an underwater plant, you are able to see bubbles coming out from it. Now this bubbles is actually oxygen. Now with every photosynthesis question, I always tell my students this. You should write down the word equation for photosynthesis in order to help you. So as we all know, photosynthesis requires a few things to happen, and the first thing will be water together with carbon dioxide would give you oxygen as well as glucose. Now what you also need would be your light energy and your chlorophyll. So looking at this, you know that oxygen is being produced over here, and these are the bubbles, or this is the gas X that they're going to ask you on, alright, in the next question. So also the fact that they told you that the experiment is set near a window hints you that this provides the light energy that is required for photosynthesis to happen. So after 8 hours, she discovered that gas X being produced. Identify gas X from our word equation. I already told you that the answer is oxygen. How gas X is formed? Now, for this question, many of you left out certain points. Either you left out the light or you left out one of the components. So please, wherever you do this kind of question, write down your word equation first and then see what's happening. So from your word equation, you know that, alright, carbon dioxide, light, water, as well as chlorophyll, they're all needed. Okay, make sure you talk about these things as well as identifying the process of photosynthesis. So I would say that gas X is formed through the process of photosynthesis, where light, carbon dioxide, and water is taken in and oxygen bracket gas X and glucose is formed. Now, please note that there are certain parts of this answer that is not needed, but I thought that it would be really good for you to put in a complete answer. So which are the parts that are not needed would be things like glucose, because they didn't really ask you what are all the end products. But I thought it's good to give a complete answer by telling them both oxygen and glucose is formed. So one way that you could actually, I know some of you are worried, you put gas X instead of oxygen because you're afraid that you identified gas X wrongly. So in this case, what you can do is you could do something like me. About what I did, I put a bracket that gas X. So the examiner cannot fault me in the event whereby I have identified gas X wrongly. Alright, let's say I say gas X is carbon dioxide, but in my second part of the question, I actually know what is happening and I put a bracket gas X there. Alright? Next, what should she do to increase the amount of gas X collected? Now for this question, you need to be very careful. Okay? What do I mean by that? You need to be very careful. In the first place, they are asking for do. I repeat and stress again. This is a common error for many students. We all know that water, carbon dioxide, and light is needed for photosynthesis to happen based on our word equation. So some of you would say, oh, she could increase the concentration of carbon dioxide. My question to you is how? How do you do it? because she said what can she do, right? All right, the word here is do. So you have to tell me a method and not just tell me what needs what to increase. You tell me how to increase it. Okay. So there are a few ways to go about doing it. You have carbon dioxide, you have light. These are the two things that you can increase in. Now some of you have also talked about chlorophyll, but obviously you cannot just inject chlorophyll into your plant cells, right? So what many of you did was to say that, oh, you could put more hydrilla plants. We accepted that. Okay, but be careful. Sometimes they will say without changing certain components. But in this case, they didn't say that. It's fine to say more hydrilla plants. That's fine. Other ways would include your increasing the amount of carbon dioxide in it. Alright, so you can say, oh, you know, put a chemical substances that will actually give up more carbon dioxide. Okay, or another way to do that would be to put in a living thing, such as a fish, because your fish would be able to respire, and when your fish respires, it gives up carbon dioxide. Or even more simply, you can talk about increasing light intensity by putting an additional lamp. Alright, so I'm going to write down two answers. So the first one is you could actually put a fish into the beaker. Alright, so the second part, the bracket part, is not needed. It's just for the explanation. Okay, so respiration will give up carbon dioxide. So when you increase the amount of carbon dioxide, you will also be able to increase the amount of photosynthesis, thereby yielding more oxygen. The second way is to increase light intensity by putting an extra lamp, okay, or light, or give it light source. All right, and that's how you can. But the key thing is always you must tell me how do you do it. All right. Next, a farmer planted two similar tomato plants in a dark room. He used two light bulbs of different light intensities. The plants were watered daily for a month. Which setup would enable the farmer to get larger tomato after 1 month? Okay, so most of you were able to correctly identify that it would be your setup 2. Why? Because there was higher light intensity. So higher light intensity means that more photosynthesis can occur. Now, here's the thing. The key thing is that you're talking about tomato here. Now, your tomato is actually a fruit. So you need to recognize that for fruits, right, they store sugar and they store starch. Okay? They store sugar and they store starch. So you need to explain somewhere in your answer that because of the higher light intensity, your plant can produce more glucose, which will be converted excess glucose would then be converted to starch and stored in your fruit. So that is something that you need to know. Well, sometimes they may not be stored as starch, they can be just stored as sugar. Okay, but the whole idea here is to understand that there's excess. Alright, so how would your answer look like? Okay, so first thing, you're going to say setup 2. Once again, sometimes they don't have marks for just identifying a setup. Your explanation needs to be there. So you have to tell me that, sorry, I didn't put the word up here. Okay, setup 2. So why? So you need to first say that, okay, in setup 2, there is a higher light intensity, which increases rate of photosynthesis. So this is where the first marking point go. Okay, brighter, higher light intensity, identification of that first marking point. Second marking point, increases rate of photosynthesis. This leads to a higher production of glucose third point, and the last point would be excess glucose would be stored as starch in the fruit. Okay, so I'm going to go through again. First marking point, identification of higher light intensity. Second one, higher light intensity increases rate of photosynthesis. This then leads to a higher production of glucose, which leads to an excess. Any excess would then be stored as starch in your fruit. So, half mark each. Okay. State one variable that must be kept for this experiment to be a fair test. So everything should be the same. The only one that you shouldn't be the same is what you're trying to find out. How does that variable affect the experiment? So obviously in this case, it will be light intensity. So besides light intensity, everything else we will accept. So examples would be amount of water, okay, given on a daily. Okay, you can have location of the setup, you can have the type of bulb. Now note the difference. Type of bulb is different from units. So you have to, because nowadays there is LED bulbs, there is fluorescent bulb. So I wouldn't use type of light or type of bulb. That is actually can be quite confusing, because type of bulb can be taken as, oh, the light intensity of each bulb must be exactly the same. Right, that is also a way that you classify type of bulb. So to make it more clear cut, please list things down like location, amount of water given, type of plant, you know what I mean? So yeah, try to avoid factors that are ambiguous. Moving on to question 36. This is very important. Alright, electrical systems. I hope you have gone through it. Jane bought a torchlight from a department store and found that there is a paper strip between the contacts of switch as shown in the diagram. The paper strip has to be pulled out before the torchlight can be used. Suggest a benefit of putting the paper strip between the contacts of the switch for the torchlight in the store. Explain why the switch is used. So first things first, we need to understand a few things. Now, the paper strip, it is actually made of paper, and paper in this case is actually a insulator of electricity. Now on this note, I would like to stress that the word insulator of electricity needs to be spelled out in full, meaning including electricity. A lot of students like to say, oh, paper is an insulator. No, insulator of what? Insulator of electricity, insulator of so many other things. So just by saying insulator alone will not give you the mark later on. You have to tell me insulator of electricity. So as you can see, the paper strip is actually placed over here, okay, and then the two contact points, if I zoom in, is actually your switch as well as your battery, okay, contacts the wire leading to your battery. So in short, if you ask me, this acts like a circuit, something to break up the circuit so that it comes incomplete and electric current cannot flow. So what is the benefit of it? Well, think about it. If you're going to put this in the store to sell, you don't want people to be able to turn on your torchlight, right? You also do not want people to waste the energy that is stored in your batteries by turning it on. So to prevent all these things from happening, the strip, which is an insulator of electricity, breaks the circuit, all right, and makes it incomplete. So I would say that the benefit is to conserve the battery, all right, and prevent wastage of electrical energy. Now, reason why. So you have to explain why is it that this would work. So remember, we're talking about COE, circuit. C stands for circuit. Is a circuit open or closed? We talk about electric current, CEO. E stands for whether the electric current is actually flowing through, and O, what is the outcome. So the first thing that I would say is that I would actually talk about how this paper is an insulator of electricity. So you have to say that the paper strip is an insulator of electricity. Hence, it causes the circuit to be incomplete and electric currents cannot flow through the circuit. The bulb, which prevents the from lighting up. Okay, so we need to take a look at this whole statement. Alright, so firstly I pointed out that it is an insulator of electricity. So because of that, it will cause your circuit to actually be incomplete. This is my C here. And then I went on to say that electric currents cannot flow through the circuit. This is my E here. Lastly, my O would be this prevents the bulb from lighting up. So it works like that, CEO. Alright? Okay, moving on. Now in the space below, draw a circuit diagram to represent the circuit in a torchlight without paper strip attached. Use symbols given below for your diagram. This question is actually very kind to you. They gave you the symbols. Now in exams, you could be asked to draw, alright, without giving any symbols help. So make sure you memorize it. Okay? So now, first things first, please use a pencil. Next thing, whenever drawing lines, please use a ruler. Now, in this case, we have to figure out, is it a parallel or is it a series? So what you do is, you always trace. That's what I like to do. So if you take a look at this, remember I told you this, we will always use from positive to negative. That's how your current starts. So from here, okay, it will go in, my bulb, out, okay, go down, go up, okay, and then after that, oh, my apologies, no, I just realized that the contact point is at the side here, so my apologies. Can we do that again? Let's do it one more time, okay? So let's start off with this end now. It's a little bit clearer. So from positive, it goes on to your negative, goes up to your bulb, goes out, goes across your switch, assuming that the paper strip is out, right? The question said without, there you go, okay? So we'll just ignore this, go in and connect it. So as you can see, what I'm seeing here is that this is actually a series circuit, not a parallel. There's only one bulb, right? And the batteries are actually one after another. Okay, so let's take a look. So from positive to negative, so this is one after another. Okay, very straightforward. So make sure whenever you are drawing something to represent a circuit, you want to be sure, if they say represent, the number of batteries, you need to take note. How many? Number of bulbs, how many? Is your switch open or closed? Okay? Now, so take a look at this. When you remove the strip out, the switch, from what I can see here, is once this is removed, your switch is actually closed. Right? So once you pull it off, this is actually closed based on the diagram here. So make sure you draw your switch. So we know that it's closed. We know that it is there's two batteries, and we know there's only one bulb. So with that, we can start drawing. So let's see. So I will actually draw my components in first. I know that I have a bulb, and I also know that I have two batteries, and I know I have a switch that comes between these two. And then I will connect using my wires. Now, very careful, your wires needs to be straight. And no gaps, absolutely no gaps at all. I cannot stress this anymore. If there is a gap, it'll be point deduction. Okay, so I'm going to make sure that all my gaps are filled and my switch is closed. So check. One bulb, checked. Two batteries, check. And batteries, make sure that it's negative, positive, negative, positive. Okay, that means the negative always follows a positive. Positive, positive cannot be the case. All right, no gaps, switch is closed. Okay, so these are some tips for drawing circuit diagrams. Moving on. Now, James' friends found the torchlight too dim. He wanted to modify the torchlight by adding more light bulb in series. Explain why additional light bulb may not result in a brighter torchlight. So from here, it really gives us a very big hint that, okay, it's in series. So if you recall, I told you before, if you add bulbs in parallel, every single bulb will be equivalent to the first bulb. So for example, if I have something that is like this, let me draw in the battery, and this is like worth 5 rays of brightness or units of brightness, the next one I add in will also be very good, 5. So it will drain my battery faster. But does it help? Yes, because then the total is 10 units of brightness, okay, or lux, which is a unit for measuring brightness. Now if it's in series, so for example, I have 1 and I'm going to add 1 more, it would not help, because with every single bulb that you add, you are actually sharing the amount of electricity between these two. Alright, and each bulb becomes dimmer with each additional bulb. So it really doesn't help with the amount of brightness. Okay? So together they will still be 5 units of brightness. So you can say that additional bulbs, okay, or rather the amount of electricity is shared between all the bulbs arranged in series. Okay, so because the electric current is shared, it wouldn't result in any, it wouldn't help with the level of brightness. Okay, moving on. Oh, this question, classic question, you have to know this. So remember in class I always tell you, common application on electricity, the electrical appliance or the electrical component, working component, could either be a bulb or an electromagnet. So this is a very classic example of that. Alright, so explain how the door unlocks when the switch is closed. So when the switch is closed, so I'm just going to trace. You will notice that this is an iron core, and iron is basically a magnetic material. So because it is a magnetic material, you actually would know that it will become an electromagnet when, okay, its electricity is running through a coil wire around this magnetic material. You have learned this in P3. Alright, so you know that this will become a magnet, and what happens is that it should attract your iron bulb in this direction. So when it attracts it in this direction, this part will move over here, unlocking your door, because now this part is no longer in existence. It will not obstruct obstruct you from opening your door. Alright, so I hope you get the rough idea. So once again, I would use the strategy of CEO. Okay, CEO stands for circuit. I'm just going to write it down. Is your circuit open or closed? E stands for, can your electric currents flow through the circuit? And O stands for, what is the outcome? Okay, so let's talk about it. So when the switch is closed, what happens? First thing, the circuit is complete, right? So when the switch is closed, the circuit, sorry, give me a second, is complete. You can use the word complete, or is closed, and electric currents can flow through the circuit. Alright, so we have done our circuit, we've done electric current. Let's talk about outcomes. As electricity flows through the iron core, the iron core becomes an electromagnet. Alright, that is the first outcome. This electromagnet, which would then attracts the iron bolt. Okay, so the whole outcome is over here. So when it attracts it, it unlocks the door. Okay, so I'm just going to highlight for you. So the first part being closed is this part. Electric currents can flow through over here, and the last part is actually your outcome, becoming an electromagnet and attracting the iron bulb. Alright, I hope I'm clear. Let's move on. Would the door lock work if the iron core is changed to a wooden core? Now this is a very, very common misconception. A lot of you actually would know, but your reason is wrong. You tell me that wood is basically it's an insulator of electricity. But you see, over here, yes, while that is true, but the problem about it is that they're talking about the core here. Now, electric current is not running through your core, it is running through the wires. Okay, If you take you know what I mean? So if this is your core, the electric current is going through the wire that is going round the core of it. So it doesn't matter whether or not your core is an electrical conductor. What's more important is that this core is actually made up of a magnetic material. So be very careful and think about it. Does it need to be a magnetic material, or does it need to be a conductor of electricity? So this is a point that you need to clearly understand. So your answer is no. This is because wood is a non-magnetic material and cannot be made or magnetized into an electromagnet. Okay? So it's also not enough to just say that, oh, it's non-magnetic and you full stop there, because you need to tell me, so what if it's non-magnetic? So in this case, because you need a magnet, electromagnet to work, you have to tell me that, because of that, there is no electromagnet. Alright, moving on. Okay, John was walking his dog in a park. It was dark except for light from the street that nearby. Describe how John was able to see his dog. So first things first, you have to understand that how light ray works, how we able to see things. So this is actually your light source. So light will come from your light source. It will hit an object that you can see, bounce off the object, and then reflects into the eyes. And that's how you're able to see the object. Okay? So let's translate it into words. So I would say the light from the lamp falls onto the dog and got reflected or is reflected into John's eyes. And that's how he was able to see his dog. Now explain how John's shadow was formed on the ground. So if you know, basically an opaque object blocks, the path of light which travels straight, forming a shadow. So that's something that is very fundamental. So you would say that John's body is opaque, hence it has blocked the path of light, causing a dark shadow to form. Okay, next. John saw the shadow on the ground changing in length and position when his dog walked past the street lamp. State the change in length and position. Now this question is actually akin to the question about the position of the sun. Alright, so in this case, what's changing is the position of the object, not the sun. Okay? So you can think about it over here is that when John walks from X to Y. So when he walks in this direction, okay, his shadow would be the shortest at Y because he's directly below the light source, and that is the same as the sun being overhead. Okay, so basically John's shadow should actually decrease. Okay, and position of shadow is actually behind John. Okay? Now, why is it behind John? Because as he walks from here, so if John is here, the shadow is from this direction and his shadow will be here. So as he walks from this point to this point, it will get shorter because it's closer to Y. So Y will be the shortest. So it's longest over here, and then as he walks, it actually decreases in length. Alright, and it's cast behind him. From Y to Z, as he walks from this position, remember it's the shortest here. Alright, and this is actually, it becomes longer. Okay, it actually increases in length. Alright, position of shadow is actually behind. Sorry, in front. My apologies, because he's walking in this direction. So the light will shine this way, he will block the light and it will be formed in front of him. Okay, so this is the answer. Moving on, question number 39. Okay, looking at this, I see the word styrofoam, I see pocket of air spaces. This looks like a question that's got to do with materials, okay, and heat and temperature at the same time. Okay, so let's see. Samantha poured 300 ml of water at 100 degrees into two identical cups. The cup B was placed in a styrofoam box. Temperature of water in each cup was measured every 5 minutes. The table below shows the temperature of water in both cups over 5 minutes. So right off the top, even before I looked at the results, based on my prior knowledge, I should be able to very quickly at least guess how the trend should look like. Now, the one that is inside the styrofoam box, which is B, has got pocket of air spaces. I know many people go, oh, the styrofoam box is a poor conductor of heat. Yes, but do you know that the reason why is actually styrofoam has also got air spaces in it, and it is this air spaces that is a poor conductor of heat. So based on this, I already know that the heat loss will be slower. Now, whenever you talk about conductors of heat, good conductor, poor conductor, you always talk about the rate at which the heat travels from one region to another region. So, revision on the most basic thing, we know that heat always travels from a region of higher temperature to a region of lower temperature. Now, we know that the surrounding is maybe approximately 25 degrees Celsius, typically. But it is said that the water is at 100 degrees Celsius, right? So heat will definitely traveling from this point to this region. Say. Now, the only difference is that heat is lost from the cup at a much slower rate in B due to the air spaces, because air is a poor conductor of heat. Okay, take note, please do not use the word insulator of heat, use poor conductor of heat. So what happens is that the rate of the heat traveling across from this region to this region here is going to slow down, and this will slow down heat loss and causes the temperature of cup B, or the water in cup B, to maintain at a higher temperature for a much longer time as compared to A. So this is actually my hypothesis even before looking at the results. So looking at it, is my prediction correct based on my explanation? Absolutely. So with every 5 minutes, you realize that cup B is always the higher one as compared to cup A. Alright? As you can see, I'm going down and I'm showing you that. Okay? Based on your observation of the diagram above, explain why the temperature in cup B decreased lower than that of A. In fact, they even tell you that it's decreased. So whenever they tell you that it's decreased, there's no point in actually giving, when you say the word decrease there, it doesn't give you any marks at all. So what we need to first explain is that the air spaces in the styrofoam sorry, just give me a minute. is a poor conductor of heat. Half mark for telling me that. Therefore, heat would be lost at a slower rate from the cup B to the surrounding. Another half mark for telling me where is heat lost, from where to where. Okay, I cannot stress this anymore. Whenever you talk about heat gain, heat loss, you must always tell me from where to where. If it's a heat gain, where did I gain my heat from? For example, from the sun to the water. If it's a heat loss, where is it lost from? Oh, from the water from cup B, the heat is lost to the surrounding. B. After some time, water droplets were observed on the inner surface lid of X of styrofoam. Okay? Explain why this happens. So I'm just going to erase all this so that I can better explain this. Now, so obviously, you know that your X is here. Now, X is quite far away from the hot water over here. So we can assume that the temperature that is over here at the top of it is actually cooler. Okay, has a lower temperature as compared to over here. So, very simply put, what actually happened is that the hot water vapor would have risen, and when it touched the cooler surface of X, it actually condensed into water droplets. Alright, so now to put that into writing, there's a few things we must always talk about. So, we said that the warm water vapor from cup would rise and touch the cooler surface of X. The water vapor would lose heat to the lid or X and condense to form water droplets. I know you may think, oh, it's only a 1 mark. Why you write so much, right? But this is the standard answer when it comes to condensation. So I really need you to memorize this and remember, we always talk about a few things. What are the few things? We always talk about touching a cooler surface, very important, because without this cooler surface, there is no temperature difference. And then I need you to talk about losing the heat to where? Remember? So to the lid. And then I need you to tell me condense to form water droplets. So these are the few points that you have to include in whenever you are talking about condensation. Moving on. Samantha took a piece of frozen meat from the freezer to defrost it by putting it on a tray. Which type of tray? Glass, metal, or wooden tray should she choose to put the frozen meat on so that she can defrost the frozen meat in the shortest time? So once again, with heat question, I will always determine which region is of a higher temperature. So in this case, alright, this is about 25 degrees Celsius surrounding, or if it's outdoor, it's 30 degrees. But I know that my meat is frozen, so that's 0 degrees, right? So based on it, I know that, okay, the heat from the surrounding would have to be lost to my meat. And while it's going into my meat, it has to go through this tray here, which I'm going to color in blue so that you can see, okay, before it's being lost to my meat. In other words, my meat is actually, it needs to gain heat in order to defrost. Now, there are quite a lot of you who told me that it needs to lose coldness. That is absolutely wrong. You cannot lose coldness. Coldness is not a type of energy. You can't do that. So the only way you can actually become less cold is to actually gain heat. Alright? So in this case, you would want a material to be a good conductor of heat. Why? Then the heat can actually pass from your surrounding and into your meat at a very fast rate, so that your meat can defrost very quickly. Okay? So the answer, let's pen all those things that we have discussed it. So metal. Why? Because metal is a better, or is the best conductor of heat as compared to the rest of the materials. Now in this case, you have to use the correct comparative word. Is it best, better, or best or better? Now, why do I use best? Because there is more than 2 items. If there's only 2 items, I will use better. Now, you need to be very careful. Why is it that I choose, I cannot put good conductor? Glass is actually a good conductor of heat, in case you didn't know. Okay, but in this case, metal is better. So if you say good, it's wrong, because your glass is also a good conductor of heat. Both are good. So it's really about comparing. You have to use the right comparative words. Okay? So it's the best conductor of heat as compared to the rest of the materials. Hence, remember I told you, whenever you talk about conductors of heat, you have to talk about speed, or the rate at which heat is being gained or lost. And whenever you talk about gain or loss, it's always from where to where. Hence, heat can be gained by the frozen meat from the surrounding at a faster rate. Now, note how I'm using words like faster, because it's already happening. It's just that I want it to be faster, so I use the word faster. Okay? Alright, moving on. Next question. Hazel helped her mother wash a few plates after lunch. She distributed the wet plates evenly into 2 stacks A and B. She placed stacks A and B on 2 tables at different locations. Alright, which stacks of plate A on B would dry faster? Explain your answer. So one has a fan, right? Okay. So for this question is talking about factors affecting rate of evaporation. Now I've said many times, the factors will include wind speed, temperature, as well as exposed surface area. So of these 3 that I've talked about, when they increase, so does rate of evaporation. A lot of you didn't talk about rate of evaporation for some strange reason. You left that out totally. You have to put it into your answer. Alright, and the last factor being humidity. When it increases, rate of evaporation actually decreases. So in this case, there's a fan. So obviously we're talking about wind speed. Now, this is worth 1 mark. So you have to first tell me that the answer would be B. This is because the presence of a fan increases wind speed, half a mark for that, which speeds up or increases the rate of evaporation, and that's where your other half mark comes from. Okay, which many of you left it out. Moving on. Okay, question B and C. Now, a drying dish rack is shown below. Dishes are placed vertically instead of horizontally. Vertically means this way instead of horizontally. Suggest two advantages of placing the dishes vertically for drying. So the first advantage is that it increases exposed surface area. Okay, why? Because when you do this and you stack a next plate on top of it and the next plate, the only parts that get exposed is the sides, right? If you take a look at it, it's only the sides that are exposed for drying. But when you put it this way, with gaps in between, all right, this whole part actually gets exposed for drying. All right, so the first thing is that, okay, it increases exposed surface area of the plates, which increases rate of evaporation. Now, it is just not good enough to tell me that, oh, increases surface area. But why? Why do you want to increase the exposed surface area? Because it increases rate of evaporation, which many of you didn't put the second part again. Now, the second advantage is that when it's placed this way, your water droplets will actually start to drip downwards. So when it drips downward, you're actually removing water, right? In that case, it helps with the drying process. So you can say that water droplets on the plates would drip downwards. Alright. Now the last part. Okay. The diagram below shows an electric dryer which is sold in countries with very cold weather. It works by enclosing dishes in a warm air for a fixed period of time. Explain how the warm air in the electrical dish dryer helps to dry the dishes. So a lot of you talk about, the dishes will gain heat. Now be very careful, it is not the dishes that will gain heat that matters, but the water droplets on the dishes that gain heat that matters, because you want your water droplets to evaporate. Okay, and the next thing is, a lot of you didn't tell me that due to the warm air, it actually increases the temperature of the surrounding. Okay, so you can say that the warm air has a higher temperature. That's important. Remember, I told you higher temperature results in faster rate of evaporation. This increases the rate of evaporation of water droplets on the plate. So because it increases rate of evaporation of the water droplets, your plates will get dry faster, right? Alright, so we've come to the end of this paper. If you've got anything that you're not sure of, please make sure to go back and slowly play back the video. Alright?